The training hall echoed with the clash of practice weapons and the hum of energy shields. Paige Foster stood at the edge of the combat arena, wrapping her hands with protective tape while watching the other cadets warm up. She had been at the Galactic Defense Academy for 3 months now, and the stares still hadn't stopped. A group of Sarkathi cadets hissed quietly as she passed, their forked tongues flicking out in what she had learned was their version of a sneer. 2 Churiks clicked their mandibles in a rhythm that translated roughly to mockery. Even the instructors treated her differently, their multifaceted eyes lingering on her with something between curiosity and disdain. Paige ignored them all. She had learned early that showing weakness only made things worse. "Attention, cadets," Master Velen's crystalline voice rang through the hall. The instructor's body refracted light in 1,000 directions, making him look like a living prism. "Today we focus on adaptive combat scenarios. You will face opponents of different sizes and capabilities. Remember, in real battle the enemy will not match your strengths." Paige noticed 3 cadets moving to the far side of the arena. Thexron, the Sarkathi who led the upper-class cadets. His scales were deep crimson, a sign of high status among his people. Beside him stood Quinlaw, a Churix whose exoskeleton bore the intricate patterns of a warrior caste. The third was Grom, a massive Gammoth whose 4 legs could crush stone when he charged. They were looking at her. Not just glancing. Staring with the focused intensity of predators selecting prey. Paige had seen that look before. Back on Earth, in the fighting rings of New Seattle where she grew up. It was the look people got right before they tried to prove something by beating down someone they thought was weaker. She continued her stretches, forcing her breathing to stay calm and even. Her heart rate remained steady. They wanted a reaction. She wouldn't give them one. "Cadet Foster," Master Velen called out. "You will begin in Arena 3. Paige walked to the designated platform, a circular space about 20 meters across. The floor was padded but firm, designed to cushion falls without impeding movement. Energy barriers hummed at the edges, preventing cadets from being thrown out during intense sparring. Around the hall, other matches began. The sounds of combat filled the air, controlled strikes and defensive maneuvers that followed Academy protocol. Everything was supposed to be measured, calculated, safe. Thexron stepped onto the platform across from her. Master Velen's instructions floated through the air, standard safety protocols and scoring rules. Paige barely heard them. She was watching Thexron's stance, the way his weight shifted, the tension in his coiled muscles. This wasn't going to be a normal sparring match. The signal chimed. They began to circle each other. Thexron moved with the fluid grace of his species, his tail sweeping behind him for balance. Paige kept her guard up, feet positioned for quick movement in any direction. "I hear your kind thinks they are warriors," Thexron said, his translator rendering the hissing sounds into galactic standard. "You come from a primitive world and expect to compete with civilized species." Paige didn't respond. Words were a distraction and she needed to focus. They exchanged a few testing strikes. His reach was longer but she was faster. Standard stuff. The kind of sparring that filled training logs and impressed absolutely no one. Then she saw it. Quinlaw and Grom were moving closer to her assigned arena. They had finished their own matches suspiciously quickly. Other cadets were rotating to new platforms, the organized chaos of a training session in full swing. Master Velen was on the far side of the hall, observing a match between 2 junior cadets. His back was to Paige's arena. Thexron's next strike came harder, faster. Not enough to be obvious to distant observers, but Paige felt the difference. She blocked it, but the impact sent vibrations up her arm. "Deathworlder," Thexron hissed, circling closer. "You do not belong here. Your people stumbled into space travel through luck, nothing more. You have no place among those who evolved beyond violence." Paige shifted her stance, adjusting for the increased aggression. Her instructors back on Earth had taught her to read opponents, to see past their words to their intentions. Thexron was positioning himself, angling her toward one side of the arena. Where Quinlaw and Grom now stood, just outside the energy barrier. The next exchange was faster. Thexron pressed forward with a combination that forced Paige to give ground. She was being herded, moved into position like a piece on a game board. Other cadets were watching now, though pretending not to. Paige could see them in her peripheral vision, their attention drawn by the intensity of the match. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed eager, anticipating something. Master Velen remained focused elsewhere, his crystalline form refracting light at the far end of the hall. Paige's mind raced through possibilities. She could call out, report what was happening. But report what exactly? That 3 cadets were standing near her arena? That her opponent was fighting harder than usual? She had no proof of coordination, nothing concrete. And calling for help would mark her as weak. In the Academy's hierarchy, that was a death sentence to her reputation. Thexron struck again, and this time Paige saw the signal. A slight flick of his tail, so quick most species would miss it. But humans had evolved to spot tiny movements, to catch the twitch that meant a predator was about to strike. The energy barrier flickered. Just for a second. Just long enough. Quinla and Grom stepped onto the platform. The arena that was supposed to hold a controlled one-on-one match now contained one human and 3 of the Academy's top fighters. Paige's heart rate finally spiked. Not from fear. From recognition. This was familiar territory. 3 against 1. The odds she had grown up facing in the rings, in the streets, in every fight that mattered. 3 on 1, she said quietly, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. That's how you want to do this? Thexron smiled, his teeth sharp and gleaming. We simply wish to help you train, Cadet Foster. After all, you need to learn to face multiple opponents. Consider this a favor. Quinla's mandibles clicked in amusement. Grom pawed at the ground with one massive hoof, the sound echoing through the arena. Around them the other cadets had stopped pretending not to watch. The entire hall's attention was now focused on Arena 3. But no one moved to intervene. No one called for the instructors. Master Velen remained at the far end of the hall, his back still turned. Paige took a breath and settled into a fighting stance her instructors would have recognized. Lower center of gravity. Weight distributed for explosive movement in any direction. Hands positioned to protect vital areas while maintaining offensive capability. The stance of someone who had learned to survive, not just to spar. All right then, she said softly. Let's see what you've got. Thexron moved first. His strike came fast and hard, aimed at Paige's ribs with none of the restraint required by Academy protocol. She twisted, taking the blow on her forearm instead of her torso. Pain shot through her arm, sharp and immediate. That wasn't a training strike. That was meant to break bone. Before she could counter, Quinla attacked from her left side. The Chirix's chitinous limbs swept low, trying to take out her legs. Paige jumped, but Grom was already charging from behind. His massive bulk slammed into her back, sending her tumbling forward across the arena floor. The padding absorbed some of the impact but not enough. Paige rolled, came up on one knee, tasting blood in her mouth. She had bitten her tongue on landing. Around the arena, cadets watched in silence. A few looked shocked, their alien features showing unmistakable distress. But most just stared with cold interest like spectators at an exhibition match. Paige scanned for Master Velen. The instructor was now facing their direction, his crystalline body refracting the arena lights. He was watching. He saw everything that was happening. And he did nothing. Get up, Deathworlder, Thexron hissed. Show us this famous human resilience we hear so much about. Paige stood slowly, testing her limbs. Nothing broken yet, but bruises were already forming. Her back ached where Grom had hit her. 3 against 1. Coordinated. Experienced fighters who had trained together. They spread out, forming a triangle around her. Basic pack tactics. One would engage while the others struck from blind spots. Paige had seen it before, had survived it before, but those fights had been against untrained street thugs. These were military cadets, top of their class. Quinla darted in next, moving with the frightening speed of her species. Her strike came high, forcing Paige to block. The impact rattled her bones. Chirix's exoskeletons were dense, like hitting reinforced steel. While Paige's guard was up, Thexron's tail whipped around and caught her ankle. She stumbled and Grom charged again. This time she couldn't fully avoid it. His shoulder caught her side, lifting her off her feet and slamming her into the energy barrier. The barrier sparked but held. It was designed to contain combatants, not protect them from each other. Paige slid down to the mat, pain radiating through her ribs. Definitely bruised, maybe cracked. She forced herself to breathe through it, shallow breaths that didn't aggravate the injury. Stay down, Grom rumbled, his voice like grinding rocks. This is mercy. Accept it. Paige looked up at the 3 of them. They stood confident, barely winded. They had hurt her and barely tried. This was a demonstration, a public humiliation designed to prove that humans didn't belong among the galactic elite. Her mind flashed back to Earth. To the fighting rings where she had learned to survive. To the instructors who had taught her that size and strength mattered, but what mattered more. To her first real fight, when 5 older kids had cornered her in an alley and she had learned what it meant to refuse to quit. One of those instructors, a scarred veteran named Coach Harris, had told her something she never forgot. When someone wants to hurt you, really hurt you, you got two choices. You can hope they show mercy or you can make them regret starting the fight. Hope ain't a strategy, kid. Paige pushed herself up. Blood dripped from her lip onto the mat. I said stay down, Grom repeated, taking a threatening step forward. No, Paige said quietly. Thexron's tongue flicked out in amusement. Still defiant. Your species truly is too stupid to recognize superior force. Very well. We will teach you. They came at her together this time. Coordinated, professional, overwhelming. Thexron from the front, Quinlaw from the left, Grom from the right. No escape route. No defensive option that would work. Paige took another strike to her shoulder. Then one to her thigh. Her head snapped back from a glancing blow that split her eyebrow. Blood ran down her face, warm and sticky. Around the arena, some cadets had started to look away. Others leaned in closer. The spectacle was building to its conclusion. The human would fall. The natural order would be confirmed. Master Velen watched with his expressionless crystalline face, making no move to intervene. Paige's vision blurred from the blood in her eye. Her ribs screamed with every breath. Her muscles ached from impacts. They were wearing her down systematically, professionally. And something inside her snapped. Not broke. Snapped into place. She had been fighting defensively, trying to minimize damage, hoping the instructor would stop this. Fighting by academy rules that her opponents had already abandoned. Treating this like a sparring match when it was clearly something else. That ended now. The next time Quinlaw struck, Paige didn't try to block. She let the blow land on her shoulder, accepting the pain, using the moment of contact to grab the Churix's limb. Quinlaw's mandibles clicked in surprise. No one willingly accepted damage like that. Paige's instructors had taught her about pain tolerance. About how humans could function through injuries that would incapacitate most species. About how Earth's harsh environment had created people who could push past their body's warning signals. She twisted Quinlaw's limb, found the joint, and applied pressure in a direction it wasn't meant to bend. The exoskeleton cracked with a sound like breaking pottery. Quinlaw's shriek filled the arena, high-pitched and piercing. Thexron froze for just a second, shocked by the sudden reversal. That second was enough. Paige released Quinlaw and turned her full attention to the Sarcathy. Her face was expressionless now, cold and focused. The pain was still there, her body still screaming at her, but she had learned long ago how to function through that noise. You wanted to see a Deathworlder fight, she said, her voice flat and empty of emotion. Here's your lesson. Grom charged, trying to use his mass to end this before it escalated further. But Paige wasn't where he expected her to be. She had moved, faster than her injured state should allow, driven by adrenaline and something deeper. She had stopped fighting to survive the match. She was fighting to survive the attack. And there was a difference. A fundamental, terrifying difference that most species in the galaxy had forgotten over millennia of civilized existence. Humans hadn't forgotten. Paige's next movement was pure instinct, honed by years of desperate fights in rings and streets and training halls. She went low, under Thexron's guard, targeting areas she had studied in xenobiology class. Pressure points. Weak spots. Places where even scaled armor couldn't fully protect. Thexron gasped, his translator struggling to render the sound. He staggered back, tail thrashing. The arena had gone completely silent except for Quinlaw's whimpering and the sound of Paige's ragged breathing. Master Velen finally moved, his hand going to the control panel. But Paige was already moving toward Grom, her eyes locked on the massive cadet with an intensity that made several watching cadets step back from the barrier. They had wanted to teach her a lesson. Now she was teaching one. Grom bellowed and charged with all four legs pounding the arena floor. The entire platform shook from his weight. Most opponents would try to dodge to get out of the way of that much mass moving at that speed. Paige had learned a long time ago that sometimes the only way out was through. She waited until the last possible moment, until she could see the rage in Grom's wide-set eyes, until his hot breath washed over her face. Then she dropped and rolled to the side, not away from him but into his path at an angle. Her shoulder hit his front left leg just above the joint. It was like hitting a tree trunk, solid and immovable. Pain exploded through her already injured shoulder. But Grom's own momentum worked against him. His leg buckled at the unexpected impact from the side. Four-legged species were stable, but that stability depended on even weight distribution. Grom crashed down hard, his massive body slamming into the arena floor with enough force to crack the padding. He slid several feet before coming to a stop against the energy barrier. Paige rolled to her feet, ignoring the fresh wave of pain. Her shoulder was definitely damaged now, hanging slightly wrong. She had maybe minutes before the adrenaline wore off and her body started shutting down from accumulated injuries. She had to finish this fast. Thexron had recovered from her strike and was circling, more cautious now. His crimson scales were rippled with patterns that Paige recognized from her studies as fear responses. But he was also angry, humiliated in front of the entire combat class. "You will pay for this, human," he hissed. "My family has influence across 3 sectors. When I am done with you, you will never." Paige didn't let him finish. Talking was a waste of energy and time. She closed the distance between them in 2 quick steps, faster than he expected from someone who should be barely standing. Thexron struck with his tail, the same move that had tripped her earlier. But this time Paige was ready. She caught the tail with her good hand, gripping just behind the ridge of spikes. The scales were rough against her palm, designed to prevent exactly this kind of grip. She held on anyway. Using the tail as leverage, she pulled herself in close, inside his reach where his longer limbs couldn't generate full power. Sarkathi were strong, but their strength came from distance and precision. Up close, pressed against his body, Paige had the advantage. She drove her elbow into the soft spot beneath his ribs, where the scales thinned to allow for breathing. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Each impact drove the air from his lungs. His translator made choking sounds, unable to render his distress into words. Thexron tried to push her away, but she was locked onto him now, her grip on his tail unbreakable despite the pain it caused her hand. She shifted her weight and swept his legs, using a technique her instructors had called borrowed force. She didn't need to be stronger than him. She just needed to use his own strength against him. They went down together, but Paige controlled the fall. She made sure Thexron hit the mat first, made sure his head bounced off the padding with enough force to stun him. Then she rolled clear, breathing hard, her vision swimming from exertion and blood loss. 2 down. 1 to go. Quinlaw had dragged herself to the edge of the arena, cradling her damaged limb. The Churx's compound eyes were locked on Paige with something that looked like genuine fear. Paige had cracked her exoskeleton, something that required medical intervention and took months to fully heal. "Stay down," Paige said, echoing Grom's earlier words. Her voice was hoarse, each word scraping her throat. Quinlaw didn't move, didn't make any sound except the quiet clicking of pain. Behind Paige, she heard Grom stirring. The massive Gameth was struggling to his feet, shaking his head to clear it. His charge had failed, but he still had size and strength. He could still crush her if he got his hooves on her. Paige turned to face him. Her left arm hung useless at her side. Blood covered half her face from the cut above her eye. Her ribs grated with each breath. She was running on fumes and adrenaline, and both were running out. But she was still standing. Grom pawed at the ground, a threat display. Around the arena, the watching cadets had backed away from the barriers. Some were calling for instructors. Others just stared in shock at what they were witnessing. Master Velen stood at his control panel, one crystalline hand hovering over the emergency shutdown. But he still hadn't activated it. Still watching. Still letting this play out. "Why do you not yield?" Grom asked, genuine confusion in his rumbling voice. "You are injured. Defeated. Surrender with honor." Paige laughed, a harsh sound that hurt her damaged ribs. "You jumped me 3-on-1 and you want to talk about honor? You want to know why I don't quit?" She took a step toward him, then another. Each movement was agony, but she kept moving. "Because on my world, if you go down, you don't get back up. Because where I come from, 3-on-1 means you fight until you can't fight anymore. Because you wanted to see what a Deathworlder could do." She was right in front of him now, looking up at his massive form. "Well, congratulations. You're seeing it." Grom reared back on his hind legs, planning to bring his full weight down on her. It was a finishing move, designed to end fights with absolute certainty. Paige dove forward under his rising bulk. She targeted his back legs, the one supporting all his weight while he reared. A kick to the inside of his knee, precisely placed, hitting the nerve cluster she had memorized from xenobiology diagrams. Grom's back leg spasmed, went numb. 4 legs were stable, but 3 legs couldn't support his reared back position. He toppled backward, crashing down onto the arena floor with the force of his own mass. The impact knocked the wind from him, left him gasping and struggling. Paige stood over him, swaying on her feet. The arena spun around her. She could taste copper in her mouth, feel the wetness of blood on her skin. "Stay down." Each word was an effort. Master Velen finally activated the emergency controls. A high-pitched tone filled the arena, the signal for immediate cessation of combat. Stun fields activated from emitters in the floor. Paige saw the shimmer in the air, felt the charge building around her. She had just enough time to think that the timing was convenient, that the instructor had waited until she had won, until the lesson had been taught. Then the stun field hit her and everything went white. Her muscles locked up, her body went rigid and she fell backward onto the mat. The last thing she saw before consciousness faded was the shocked faces of cadets pressed against the arena barriers, staring at the human who had just dismantled 3 of their best fighters. The last thing she heard was the sound of medical teams rushing onto the platform. Then everything went dark and Paige Foster let the pain finally take her under. Paige woke up in the medical bay 3 hours later. Her left arm was in a regeneration sleeve, her ribs wrapped in compression bandaging that hummed with healing frequencies. A medical drone hovered nearby, monitoring her vital signs with soft beeping sounds. The Churix medic on duty clicked her mandibles and what Paige had learned was surprise. You should not be awake yet. The sedatives we administered should have kept you unconscious for another 6 hours minimum. Human metabolism, Paige said, her voice rough. We process drugs differently. The medic made a note on her data pad. Yes, I'm learning this. Your species has remarkable recovery capabilities. Also remarkable capacity for ignoring pain that should render you immobile. Before Paige could respond, the door slid open. 2 Academy security officers entered, their uniforms crisp and formal. Behind them came a third figure that made Paige try to sit up straighter despite the pain. Admiral Torith, the Academy commandant himself. He was Valerian, a species known for their military prowess and long lifespans. His skin had the texture of aged leather, crisscrossed with scars from dozens of campaigns. One eye was cybernetic, glowing with a faint blue light. He walked with a cane, not from weakness but from an injury that he had reportedly refused to have fully healed, claiming it reminded him of an important lesson. Cadet Foster, his voice was deep and carried the weight of command. You are to report to Disciplinary Hearing Chamber 1 at 1400 hours. You are being charged with excessive use of force against fellow cadets. Paige's stomach dropped. She had defended herself, but Academy regulations were clear. There were protocols, limits, acceptable levels of response. I understand, sir, she said. Admiral Torith's good eye studied her for a long moment. The medic informs me you will be physically capable of attending. Is this correct? Yes, sir. He nodded once, then turned and left without another word. The security officers followed, leaving Paige alone with the medic and the quiet beeping of medical equipment. At exactly 1400 hours, Paige entered the hearing chamber. It was a circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Academy officials filled many of the seats. She recognized instructors, administrative staff, and senior cadets who served on the disciplinary board. At the highest tier sat Admiral Torith, flanked by 2 other high-ranking officers. Paige walked to the platform on unsteady legs. Her arm was still in the regeneration sleeve. Her face bore visible bruises that the accelerated healing hadn't fully erased yet. Across from her, on another platform, stood Thexron, Quinlaw, and Grom. They looked worse than she did. Quinlaw's entire left side was encased in medical equipment, her cracked exoskeleton still healing. Grom had a leg brace and moved stiffly. Thexron's scales were dull, indicating significant physiological stress. Behind them sat several Sarkathi in expensive robes. Thexron's family, Paige realized. They looked at her with cold hatred. This hearing will now commence. Admiral Torith's voice filled the chamber. Cadet Foster, you are charged with excessive use of force resulting in serious injury to 3 fellow cadets. How do you respond to these charges? Paige kept her voice steady. I defend my actions as appropriate response to a coordinated assault, sir. One of the Sarkathi family members hissed. She admits to the violence. This savage attacked our son and 2 other students without provocation. She is a danger to every cadet in this academy. Admiral Torith held up one hand for silence. We will review the evidence. Display the combat footage. The center of the chamber lit up with a holographic projection. It showed the arena from multiple angles, every moment captured in perfect detail. Paige watched herself on the platform with Thexron. The footage showed the careful positioning, the way the other 2 cadets moved into place. It showed the energy barrier flickering, though so briefly most species would miss it. But the Academy's recording equipment didn't miss it. The footage continued, showing the first strike with excessive force. Showing Quinlaw and Grom entering the arena. Showing the coordinated assault from 3 directions. Several officials leaned forward in their seats. This was not the story they had been told. The footage showed Paige taking hit after hit, trying to defend herself. It showed her being slammed into the barrier, blood running down her face. It showed Master Velen watching and doing nothing. Then it showed the moment she stopped defending and started attacking. The reversal was sudden, brutal, efficient. 3 opponents down in less than 90 seconds. When the footage ended, the chamber was silent. Admiral Torith looked at Master Velen, who sat in the lower tiers looking significantly less crystalline than usual, as if his entire structure had dimmed. Instructor Velen. You observed this assault and did not intervene. Explain. Master Velen's voice was quiet. I believed it would be character building for Cadet Foster to face superior numbers. I did not realize the level of force being applied. The footage clearly shows excessive force from the initial strike. You are either incompetent or complicit. Master Velen had no response. Admiral Torith turned to Thexron. Cadet. Did you coordinate this assault? Thexron's translator made uncertain sounds. His family whispered urgently to him, but the Admiral's cybernetic eye focused on them with enough intensity that they fell silent. We wanted to teach her a lesson, Thexron finally admitted. She does not belong here. Her people are primitives who stumbled into space. We thought if we showed her she could not compete, she would leave. So you conspired to injure a fellow cadet badly enough to force her withdrawal from the academy. We did not think she would fight back like that. We thought she would submit like a civilized being. Admiral Torith stood, and the entire chamber seemed to shrink around him. He walked down from his tier, his cane clicking against the floor with each step. He stopped in front of the 3 injured cadets. You thought she would submit. You believed that your coordinated assault would break her will. You assumed that because her people are new to galactic society, they are weak. He turned to face the entire assembly. This is why we fail. This is why the Galactic Defense Force struggles against enemies who should be inferior. We have become so civilized, so refined, that we have forgotten what real combat means. He gestured to Paige. This cadet comes from a world where survival is not guaranteed. Where violence is not theoretical. Where 3 against 1 means you fight with everything you have or you die. She responded to lethal force with appropriate counterforce. She did exactly what any soldier should do when ambushed by superior numbers. He looked at Thexron's family. Your son attempted murder masked as training. The evidence is clear. He and his co-conspirators are expelled from this academy effective immediately. Protests erupted from the Sarkathi family. Admiral Torith silenced them with a look. As for Instructor Velen, you are removed from combat instruction and will be reassigned pending further review. He turned to Paige. Cadet Foster, you are cleared of all charges. Furthermore, your performance under extreme duress has been noted in your file. The Galactic Defense Force Special Operations Division has requested early recruitment consideration. You will meet with their representatives next week. Paige stood straighter despite her injuries. Thank you, sir. Admiral Torith's scarred face might have shown the hint of a smile. Dismissed, cadet. Get some rest. You have earned it. 3 weeks after the hearing, Paige returned to full training status. The regeneration sleeve came off, her ribs healed completely, and the bruises faded to nothing. Human healing was fast when given proper medical support, something the Academy doctors noted with fascination in their reports. But the Academy itself had changed in ways that had nothing to do with medicine. Paige noticed it the first day back in the training halls. Cadets who had previously ignored her or whispered insults now watched her with different eyes. Not hostile. Not exactly friendly either. Something closer to respect mixed with uncertainty. A young Valerian cadet approached her in the corridor between classes. His name was Trent, fresh from his homeworld and barely 2 months into academy life. Cadet Foster, he said, his voice formal but not cold. I watched the footage of your fight. The instructors made us all watch it during tactical analysis. I was wondering if you might answer some questions about your techniques. Paige adjusted her equipment bag on her shoulder. What kind of questions? How did you continue fighting with those injuries? Our instructors teach us that pain impairment reduces combat effectiveness by 70%. You seem to ignore it completely. Paige thought about how to explain it. I didn't ignore the pain. I just didn't let it make my decisions. Pain is information. It tells you something is damaged. But on Earth, stopping because something hurts can get you killed. So we learned to keep moving anyway. Trent's eyes widened. Your world taught you to override survival instincts? No. It taught us that sometimes the only way to survive is to push through things that hurt. More cadets gathered as they talked, forming a small crowd in the corridor. Paige recognized several of them from combat class, species she had never spoken with before. A Churix named Velna clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. In the footage, you targeted joint structures and nerve clusters with precision. How did you know where to strike? Xenobiology class, Paige said simply. I studied the anatomy of every species I might face. Figured it was good information to have. But you applied that knowledge under extreme stress, while injured, against multiple opponents simultaneously. That requires integration of cognitive and physical processes that should be impossible during adrenaline response. Paige shrugged. Humans train under stress on purpose. We practice while tired, hurt, scared. Because that's when you actually need the skills. Training in perfect conditions doesn't prepare you for real situations. The concept seemed to genuinely confuse several of the cadets. They had been taught in controlled environments, with safety protocols and measured progression. The idea of deliberately training under adverse conditions was foreign. Over the next few days, more cadets approached her. In the dining hall, in the gym, during free periods. They all wanted to understand how a human had defeated 3 superior opponents. How she had continued fighting when she should have been incapacitated. How she had remained calm when most species would have panicked. Admiral Torith watched these interactions with his cybernetic eye but didn't interfere. The unofficial mentoring happening in corridors and training rooms was teaching lessons that formal classes couldn't. On the 5th day, Paige received a message to report to Training Arena 7 at 0600 hours. When she arrived, she found 20 cadets waiting, representing a dozen different species. Trent stepped forward as their spokesperson. We talked to Commander Havoc in the training division. He approved us to use this arena for supplemental combat study. We were hoping you would teach us. Paige looked at the assembled cadets. Some she recognized from her own class level. Others were upperclassmen who theoretically outranked her. All of them looked at her with genuine interest. Teach you what exactly? She asked. How humans fight, Velna said. The philosophy behind your combat approach. Admiral Torith told the entire academy that we have forgotten what real combat means. We want to remember. Paige set down her equipment bag slowly, thinking. She wasn't an instructor. She was barely past basic training herself. But these cadets were asking for something genuine, something real. All right, she said finally. But we do this my way. First rule is no holding back because you're worried about hurting someone. Controlled aggression but real aggression. Second rule is if something hurts, you say so, but you don't stop unless you physically can't continue. Third rule is we train as partners, not opponents. The goal isn't to beat each other. It's to make each other better. The cadets agreed immediately. For the next 2 weeks, Paige ran early morning sessions in Arena 7. She taught them techniques from Earth, fighting styles developed over thousands of years of human warfare. But more than techniques, she taught them the mindset. You're thinking about the next move, she told Trent during a sparring session. Stop. Be in this moment. Feel what your opponent is doing right now. Humans survive because we're present in the fight, not planning 3 steps ahead. To Velna she explained pressure points and leverage. You're stronger than me in direct force. But strength only matters if you can apply it. I don't need to be stronger. I need to be smarter about where I put my force. To a massive Gameth named Ren who had been friends with Grom, she demonstrated momentum control. Your size is an advantage until someone uses it against you. Learn to change direction fast. Be unpredictable. Mass is only useful if you can control it. Word spread through the academy. More cadets requested to join the sessions. Paige had to split them into groups, running 3 sessions a day around her regular classes. The official instructors watched with interest. Some disapproved of a junior cadet teaching others. But the results were undeniable. Cadets who trained with Paige showed improved performance in regular combat classes. They moved with more confidence, responded faster to threats, and showed better stress management. In the 4th week, Paige received an encrypted message. It came from the Galactic Defense Force Special Operations Command. They wanted her to report for evaluation and potential early recruitment. She met with their representatives in a secure conference room. 2 officers, both veterans with the kind of scars that told stories. A human commander named Walsh and a Valerian major named Karath. We've reviewed your file, Commander Walsh said. Your academy performance is excellent. Your tactical scores are top 5%. But what interests us is your combat effectiveness under pressure. You disabled 3 trained opponents while significantly injured. That's the kind of operator we need. Major Karath leaned forward. Special operations requires individuals who can function in extreme circumstances, often alone or with minimal support. Your species' natural resilience combined with your training makes you an ideal candidate. However, we need to understand your motivation. Why did you continue fighting when surrender was an option? Paige thought about the question carefully. Because surrender meant accepting that I don't belong. That humans are too weak for this academy, this military, this galaxy. I fought because giving up would have proven them right. And if you join special operations, you will face situations far worse than 3 cadets in a training arena. You will be outnumbered, outgunned, alone behind enemy lines. Will you still fight then? Yes, sir. Why? Because that's what humans do. We survive. We adapt. We don't quit. Commander Walsh smiled. That's the right answer. Report to Special Operations Training Command in 6 weeks. You'll finish this academy semester, then you're ours. After the meeting, Paige returned to Arena 7 where her latest training group waited. 30 cadets now, representing nearly every species in the academy. All right, she said, dropping her bag. Today we talk about fear management. Because fear is going to happen in real combat. The question isn't whether you feel it. The question is what you do with it. She looked around at the attentive faces, alien and diverse but united in their desire to learn. Humans don't fight because we enjoy violence. We don't fight to dominate or prove superiority. We fight because our world taught us that survival isn't guaranteed. It has to be earned. Every single day. She stepped onto the training mat. Now pair up. We're going to practice fighting through exhaustion. Because real combat doesn't stop when you're tired. As the cadets began their exercises, Paige caught sight of Admiral Torith watching from the observation deck. He nodded once, a gesture of approval, then turned and walked away. The academy was learning. Not just combat techniques but the philosophy behind them. Understanding that strength wasn't just about force or technology. It was about will, determination, and the refusal to surrender when everything hurt and victory seemed impossible. It was about being human in a galaxy that was just beginning to understand what that meant.